The campaign you've done on the field of anti-racism down the years, some commentators are suggesting this is a take the knee for Henry Novak moment. Would you take the knee for Mr. Novak?
I think to honour what that
Was
family...
it yes or no, Mr. Lammy? Would you take the knee for Henry Novak?
I think no, because, look, I don't think that the family are asking for symbolism. They're asking for genuine common sense policing, and for them, they want to see a reduction in knife crime, and of course they're concerned about some of the policing that they saw on this occasion. So you agree,
taking the knee is mere symbolism, isn't it, really? It was a bit of a charade at times.
The stark reality of knife crime on British streets collided heavily with political performance during a tense LBC exchange between Nick Ferrari and Deputy Prime Minister David Lammy. When pressed on the tragic and horrific killing of student Henry Novak, Lammy faced a sharp reckoning over his past high-profile political activism. Ferrari aggressively put the DPM in a corner, asking directly if he would take the knee for Novak, forcing Lammy to distance himself from his own historical protest gestures and pivot instead toward the family's plea for common sense policing. The confrontation laid bare the heavy friction between past institutional gestures which Lammy conceded, felt like a charade at times, and the immediate, urgent legislative and systemic responsibilities currently facing the Labour government as they confront an ongoing knife crime crisis.
Today, he no longer wishes to serve.
The parents and the stepmother of the student in Southampton met with senior politicians, including the Prime Minister, yesterday, and they're talking about common sense policing, both as DPM and Justice Secretary. What does common sense policing mean to you, Mr. Lammy?
Well, look, clearly what happened for their son was horrendous. I've got two boys around the same age.
You do, yeah.
It's heartbreaking for any young person to die in the circumstances that they had to witness and that we've all seen on video clips. So my heart goes out to them. They're absolutely right. Of course, they want to see common sense policing. They want to see knife crime dealt with in our country. And I'm committed to dealing with knife crime. I have been throughout my career. We have seen a drop this year, 22%. That's important. But there are still too many young people dying on our streets as a result of knife crime. We've introduced laws for those carrying zombie knives. There's more to do. And my heart goes out to them. I support them in their desire to have a measured discussion about this common sense policing, of course, and not to have the divisive rhetoric that we've seen from some political quarters this week.
Noting the campaign you've done on the field of anti-racism down the years, some commentators are suggesting this is a take the knee for Henry Novak moment. Would you take the knee for Mr. Novak?
I think to honour what that
Was
family...
it yes or no, Mr. Lammy? Would you take the knee for Henry Novak?
I think no, because, look, I don't think that the family are asking for symbolism. They're asking for genuine common sense policing, and for them, they want to see a reduction in knife crime, and of course they're concerned about some of the policing that they saw on this occasion. So you agree, taking the knee is mere symbolism, isn't it, really? It was a bit of a charade at times. That was a moment back then when we were still in the pandemic. This is today. This is this particular incident in our country that's heartrending, and my heart goes out to this family, and my determination is to do all we can to reduce knife crime in this country. But where there are perpetrators, they should see the full face of the law. And I understand that the AG is also looking at the sentencing and might be making a referral in this case, so I've got to tread a bit carefully.
All right, let's move finally to the report by the National Audit Office, which shows that Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie have made no money in rent, living in exclusive palace properties for nearly 2 decades. Does Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor have questions to answer, Deputy Prime Minister?
Look, I think that there's scrutiny of the Crown Estate finances on this issue. These, generally speaking, are parliamentary issues in our country. I haven't got views either way. I haven't looked at the detail of this, but Parliament may well take an interest.
Grateful for your time. Millions of unmarried couples will get stronger rights through major new reforms. The consultation starts today. My thanks to Deputy Prime Minister, Justice Secretary David Lammy. We've been talking about the Makerfield by-election, so for relative reasons and for broadcasting, we need to remind you of the list of candidates. And here's my LBC colleague, George Ellison.
Jake Austin for the Liberal Democrats, Count Binface for the Count Binface Party, Andy Burnham representing Labour and the Cooperative Party, Dan Clark for the Libertarian Party, John Dyer, Independent, Ed Gemmell, Climate Party, Paul Gould, Independent, Howling Lord Hope, the official monster raving loony party, Rob Kenyon for Reform UK, Rob Ponell, Independent, Rebecca Shepherd, Restore Britain, Sarah Wakefield, the Green Party, Peter Ward for Rejoin EU, and Michael Winstanley for the Conservative.
The stark confrontation between Nick Ferrari and Deputy Prime Minister David Lammy goes far deeper than a standard sharp-elbowed broadcast interview. It serves as a critical diagnostic for the immense governing pressures now resting squarely on the shoulders of the Labour government. For years, leading figures within the progressive movement used symbolic acts like taking the knee to signal an uncompromising stance against systemic injustice and institutional failure. Yet, as this exchange powerfully demonstrates, the transition from the purity of opposition politics to the heavy, unyielding reality of executive state power requires trading theatrical gestures for tangible, systemic outcomes. David Lammy's explicit admission that past symbolic movements could feel like a charade at times is not merely an uncomfortable political retreat. It is a profound structural recognition that symbolic concessions are utterly empty comforts to grieving families demanding structural justice. When looking at the devastating loss of Henry Novak, the stakes could not be higher for a Labour administration determined to prove it can protect its citizens. The tragic loss of a young life to the epidemic of knife crime demands a fierce, morally clear response from the Justice Secretary and Deputy Prime Minister. While conservative commentators try to weaponize this shift to paint progressive principles as fickle, the deeper truth is that the family of Henry Novak and the public at large have entirely outgrown superficial media optics. They are demanding what Lammy correctly identified as common sense policing, a fundamental right to safety, decisive legislative action against weapons like zombie knives, and an unyielding commitment to reducing violence on the streets. For a democratically aligned government, the objective cannot be to simply perform morality on television. It must be to wield the machinery of the state to enforce the full weight of the law against violent perpetrators while addressing the systemic rot that fuels such tragedies. Furthermore, this interview highlights a broader institutional crisis regarding accountability that spans far beyond the streets to the very heights of British society. When the discussion pivoted sharply to the National Audit Office's findings regarding Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie living rent-free in exclusive properties for decades, the need for robust parliamentary scrutiny became undeniable. The Labour government must maintain strong intellectual and moral positioning across all fronts. If the rule of law and strict public accountability are to mean anything, they must apply universally, from the combating of street-level crime to the financial transparency of the Crown Estate and figures like Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. True moral clarity refuses to minimize victims of crime, just as it refuses to shield institutional elites from parliamentary oversight. Ultimately, this moment signals a decisive end to the era of purely performative politics. The Labour government cannot afford to be passive, nor can it allow the conversation to be derailed by divisive rhetoric from political opponents who seek to capitalize on tragedy rather than solve it. The path forward demands an unshakable alignment with the communities bearing the brunt of these systemic failures. To govern effectively, David Lammy and the broader leadership must act with absolute confidence and urgency, implementing robust justice reforms, empowering common sense policing, and securing safety for the next generation. True justice is built not on the transient symbols of the past, but on the concrete, permanent protections that only a committed and transformative government can deliver.